We have to start with Dignitas announcing that Huni, the $2.3 million man, is available to look at other options for the summer. Jacob, you reported on this. We gave a lot of opinions on this. Did you ever think that we would be in a position that the playoffs are not even over in the LCS, and already the relationship between Huni and Dignitas has dissolved into this?
It's crazy, right? The couple months ago during free agency, it sold off Vulcan's contract to Cloud9 for the $1.5 million, and it looked like they were going all in on. As he told Tyler and Daniel on opening weekend, it's seemed like they were really sort of keyed in on focusing on him, and now here we sit less than a split later, and it seems like it was a terrible investment. I think that I got a lot of questions after some tweets regarding Michael Prindiville, the CEO of Dignitas, saying that the money wasn't guaranteed. Just to be clear, we reported that the money deal or the money figure before all the contract terms were finalized, and that they were working towards finishing up that. I do not believe that the salary changed. As I understand, it was $2.3 million across the 2 years, with 1.1 first year and 1.2 second year. Whether they made the entirety of it guaranteed to be determined, but they certainly did make the first year. And so they're going to be out of pocket if he does transfer teams. They're going to be out of pocket at least $500,000.
So
which is
when
a lot of
guaranteed,
money.
Just to interject here, when you say guaranteed, that means that Huni is entitled to the entire $2.3 million?
Right. So what got guaranteed is I think it changed, but I think that his first part of that, the first year of that, the $1.1 million is the guaranteed portion of the 2-year deal.
Okay.
And so he is going to be paid out for the remainder of the season, no matter what. And I would say that is I mean, I still think, right? Like, I still don't think they're going to be able to move because of what's happened with the schedule, because of coronavirus and how they've changed around dates for the summer split. They realistically have 2 to 3 weeks to move his contract once the playoffs are over. And I don't think there's anyone that wants to take on, and we could speculate and spitball here as much as we want. I've talked to a lot of teams around the LCS over the past weekend since this was announced. I don't know anybody who wants to take on another at least $500,000 to $600,000 worth of liabilities just for this year alone. Plus, that doesn't include buyout, because they'd had to buy out that contract, right?
Right.
So, yeah. There's many different ways this could go. There could be a team that goes, hey, Dignitas, we're going to pay you a buyout. And it could be that the buyout, if the buyout is scaled, it depends on the contract language, but if the buyout is scaled based on salary, that buyout's going to be enormous. That's going to be like at least like $500,000, $600,000 buyout, if not more, depending if you're buying out the entirety of the 2-year, $2.3 million contract, right? And you're reassigning that to someone. So we're talking a ton of money up front, much less by actually paying the salary, which is just for this year. I mean, do the math, right? So the salary is November to November, and it's $1.1 million. How much of that's already been paid? Probably about that's like 5 months, a little bit under half the year, probably about $450,000, $500,000 of that's already been paid for this year. And you've got to pay the remaining like $500,000 to $600,000 owed left on just this year alone. We're talking like $1 million+ acquisition in a time where there's a bunch of esports teams scaling back. I actually think that there are layoffs coming because of coronavirus, because people's incomes in other games is prize money, etc. Advertisers can't spend as much because they're having to make cutbacks, right? There's a ton of stuff happening right now that is going to hurt the economics of esports right now because of just the global pandemic of the coronavirus. And it's in a 2 to 3 week transition. It's a huge ask to take on that much money, to pay that much money in a short period of time of uncertainty in the world right now.
Emily, is there any team in the LCS that would even want Huni at this point?
Well, so there are two things. There are two like big takes I have on this. One, this is something that I know Travis Gafford brought up, but other people have also brought up, and I'm sure Jacob already knows. It's Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. They were trying to lay off people, and there was a big backlash, and they hired them back. But the end result is like their parent company.
Emily, just 1 second. Harris Blitzer also owns the New Jersey Devils and Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
In the NBA and NHL.
So, like because they aren't playing, like nothing's going on except for esports. Esports is still going to be affected, especially if a major parent company has a lot of traditional sports investments. So that is one thing. Will a team want to pick up Huni So I've also been talking to teams about what this offseason is going to look like, because it's also really short. And this is something I brought up last show, is that there's only 3 weeks between finals and the start of summer because of the way the scheduling has worked out. In that conversation, I was talking about the fact that a lot of pro players who are not from the United States might not be able to go home for a really long time.
Right.
In this case, it also means that teams are going to have a really short window to even shuffle around players. And you also have a bunch of players who are already stuck in the United States because of LCS. So it's a very weird offseason. I don't see a lot of teams making huge moves. I don't see a team that's willing to pick up Huni's contract for economic reasons, and also just because it's such a short amount of time that you're going to be not playing to playing again. And that's a really narrow window to integrate someone like Huni on your team, who I actually am about to defend here, because I don't think Huni is a bad player, but I do think he is the type of player that needs a very specific team identity to play with. And because he is that type of player, because he himself as an individual has such a really specific play style and way that he wants to play, and that has not changed, which I think makes him look really, really good at times and also makes him look really, really bad at times. I think that is just by nature, a player like that is also additionally more difficult to integrate into an existing team and system.
So Tyler, how much of Dignitas's challenges and ultimately not making the playoffs this split, how much of that do you put on Huni and how much of that do you put on the rest of the team?
They kind of go hand in hand, right? I mean, as Emily and Jacob both allude to, when Huni's on a team, he's a lot of the times the focus of the team. Huni himself called it Hunitas. There's a reason why this is not a new thing in esports, especially in League of Legends. I think we're seeing this new kind of wave coming in where I think each franchise is kind of picking one player and kind of building around that guy as the franchise player. We see it with TSM, with Bjergsen. They gave him co-ownership, building around him. He's going to be there for the next 3 to 5 years. That's his team. We saw it with Gen G of Ruler, very similar thing where they're building around him, gave him a long-term contract, basically told Ruler, this is your team, you're the driver. We saw it with Faker of T1. While it's been his team for, since 2013, it officially became his team this year with the part ownership. And I think of Dignitas, I really do think they saw Huni as very charismatic, very marketable, and a very skilled player who still has, I think 2 to 3 to 4 years of prime left. He's still a very young player. I think people forget how young he really is. And they really looked at Huni as, this guy could be our franchise. We can build our entire franchise about this Huni guy. He's marketable. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's skilled. He's flashy. And I think Huni, in this relationship, we're seeing the downside of trusting in who your franchise player is. With Ruler, Faker, Bjergsen, it's probably going to work out. Those players have won championships as, main guys on the team. I mean, Faker and Ruler have both won World's MVPs. Huni, on the otherwise, I think Dignitas were a little bit too eager to kind of make him the franchise player, and now we're left in the situation where they have a bloated contract, a player who you need to build around to make him work, and not a lot of time to sell off this contract in a global pandemic. So it could not be worse for Dignitas right now.
So 2 points I want to add to that. Sorry,
Right.
Arda. So first point is that Tyler's right. I asked Michael Prindeville about this a couple of months ago when I was working on the Vulcan piece that we ultimately put out about sort of the Vulcan transfer. I asked him how important was it that he build a team of influencers in League of Legends, simultaneous, competitive players who are also high profile and influencers. If you remember, right, Dignitas was this humongous brand. If you think about their history, they were a humongous brand in League of Legends, probably the second or third most popular team in North America back in the heyday. They had Scara and I'm a Cutie Pie. They had these guys that were super popular on stream, still are, but no longer a part of Dig. And you see that what happened to them, they were relegated. And then they came back by being they were relegated and sort of fell out of League of Legends. They came back by merging with Apex and being acquired by Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. They had a little bit of a run, but they weren't particularly popular nor very good. They were okay. And then they got kicked out of the league in franchising, which is something we'll talk about in a second with the LCK. They got kicked out of the league, and they were absent for the league, and then they came back by buying Clutch. And they wanted to have a team that, while competitive, moved the needle as a brand. Dignitas, in between the time that they came back into League of Legends 5 months ago, with the rebranding of Clutch, and the time that they got kicked out of the LCS in the franchise system, they were incredibly irrelevant. What can you tell me Dignitas had other than a Rocket League team in esports? They had nothing. This was an irrelevant brand that Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment paid a lot of money for Apex and Dignitas back in the day, 2016. They paid a lot of money back then to make this merger happen. They invested even more money. This is an organization that's very successful in sports with the Devils and the Sixers. These are two very popular. Even when they were bad, the Sixers were fairly popular. Like, they're a successful sports org, and they wanted to be relevant. And so hitching your toe to Huni, that seemed, at least at the time, a really good decision. For him, he wanted to be the highest paid player in the LCS. That was the resounding sentiment. He wasn't in the end. That is still Impact, who had that $3.4 million 3-year contract that he signed. This is the final year of that contract, so it's the largest of the 3 years. But Huni was damn close. He was probably about $100,000 shot of being equally paid as in the same bracket as Impact. So it made a lot of sense here for both parties here. They wanted to be popular. Huni's immensely popular, charismatic. You know, don't forget, like, when he first joined Fnatic and Immortals, how popular and how that his brand came along with it. And so it made sense, but it doesn't make sense now. The other part I just want to say on that is Huni's got two options here, right? He can either stay in the U.S. and be in the LCS, which I don't think will happen.
What team is taking him? What team, honestly, what team is taking him?
Chat seems to think that Evil Geniuses would be a good fit, but, like, EG's already shelled out enough money. I don't see them making that financial bet, right? Like, they've already spent a lot of
and they have two imports. They have Jizuke and Bang.
Which means you have to give up one.
You'd have to take a player out.
And not only that, they're on a hot streak, and they could very well contend for the LCS title. Why would they want to make any changes?
Right. I agree. And then the other part of this, right, is that his other option is South Korea. Because if he leaves, he can't come back. There's no way he's going to go to Europe, right? Like, because of the pandemic. He could either go, if he leaves the U.S., he will not be back. So if he decides to go home for a break in the midst of all this, he's not coming back, at least for a while, because of what's going on with the pandemic. They will not let him back in the country as a Korean citizen. So he can either go back and try to get on an LCK team. I don't even know which LCK team, one, needs a top laner like him, and two, has the money to afford it. That's something else we're going to talk about here in a second. It's like the financial stability of LCK teams. There aren't many that are financially stable enough to take on that $1 million+ acquisition, right?